Good day, everyone. Hope you're taking good care of yourselves wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another delightful, delicious episode of Comics 101, where we dive into the world of fantasy and all things comic book related. Today's episode is on House of the Dragon, episode 2. Our podcast is Two Maesters, which is part of the Pick Up the Mic group. Myself and Josh will be talking today about episode 2. But first, Josh, you want to say a quick hello to everyone?
Hey everybody, I hope all of you are enjoying yourselves during this week of tumultuous weather that's considerably changing from one to another. Like, I was going out to a friend's leaving do in Notting Hill. I got there, it was sunny, then the clouds came, then it was sunny, then it rained, and then it was like this beautiful sunset as well with a rainbow, which was nice. But I was like, just give me one weather for the whole day so I can plan what I need to do for that day.
God, you just can't be happy even with a rainbow, Josh. You're a difficult man to please. More difficult than myself. Well, so episode 2. My first thought I'd say is this episode is more like a character development episode. Yeah. You get the juicy stuff in episode 1, you know. You get a lot of violence, you get that crazy C-section scene. And then it always seems like a sort of formula in series that episode 2 is a bit more chill. You know, they've got you hooked like a fish and then they're going to do this. I mean, what did you think? What's your first initial reaction?
I would say the same. Yeah, it was like not just like character building, but kind of like world building as well. Especially that they started off with the crab feeder as well, and how you've got the sailors nailed to wooden posts as well. So that really does set the scene of the episode. And I think the first episode, as you said, was more of like a shock factor to hook you in, and the second episode is then just kind of like showing you the pace at which the series is going to go for the first series. And I've actually found out, my brother told me they have renewed it for a second series, so that's also amazing.
Oh,
and I think they wanted to like delve into the side characters. So, like, for example, you've got the queen who was not queen. So
yeah,
Rhaenyra Targaryen, and so the fact that you've got a bit of her backstory, you've also got a bit of a backstory on her husband as well, the sea snake, and you see his background. And I think,
cool.
And I think the key thing I would say about this episode that I saw straight away is like, and possibly for the whole series, they just want to show the audience what was life like for people in the Middle Ages. Like when you watch the series and then you see certain things we'll probably talk about later on, that you realize, yeah, that did happen in the Middle Ages. And right, we would be horrified that these things happen, but to them, it's like commonplace.
I know. I mean, it is based on medieval Europe, so things like thieves getting their hands chopped off, and like people going to watch public executions, like Ned Stark in the OG Game of Thrones. Spoilers. You know, we just wouldn't see that today. That's so beyond what we can imagine. That's why, like, watching the show, I feel like I'm watching history in a way, even though it's a fantasy. Just to pick up on like a few things you said there, like, it was really cool seeing the character development from Corlys Velaryon, like that speech he does at the end where it's like, we're the realm's second sons, like our wealth isn't inherited, it's earned through grit and fire. That's definitely not the quote for quote, but roughly the gist. I rewatched it this morning, and that speech at the end just gets me fired up. And I'm well excited to see what happens with this crab feeder as well. I mean, what a really intimidating name, crab feeder. I felt like it was like a weird, like sort of like subtle joke in the first one, and like they called him the crab feeder. But he does. I mean, looking at that first scene where you see what the pirates look like, and also at the end as well. I watched the trailer for episode 3, and they look like these pirates look bloody scary. Like really scary. Like I just wouldn't want to be near them. So yeah, looking forward to that. And I think one thing that was, again, with the character development thing is this Rhaenyra and Alicent Hightower's sort of relationship. You really see that, like, it's budding. Like when they're in the sept or surrounded by all those candles, there's such a touching moment when Rhaenyra kind of like has a bit of cries a little, breaks down. She's lost her mom.
Yeah.
She's got all this responsibility thrust onto her shoulders. And it's a bonding moment. And then, with the end of the episode, when spoilers, when the king announces that he's gonna, his daughter's just persuaded him to remarry, and then he could have just told her the night before, but he just turns around and goes, I'm gonna marry your best friend, girl. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah. I'm not gonna marry the sea snake's daughter. I'm not going to try and unify the two warring sects of the Targaryen line. I'm not going to bring them together. You know what? I'm going to pull some oil into this frying pan and decide to marry my sister's best friend, which not only will piss off his brother, piss off the queen who wasn't the queen, piss off the sneeze steak, and just piss off his general counsel, because how many of them are like, no, you should marry Corlys Velarion's daughter. That would be the more prudent thing to do. You need a strong Westeros. And it's like, you know what? F it, I'm doing what I want to do.
I know. It's like he's just made a joke out of everything, like literally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go on.
Yeah. And it's like, one of the things that I see with him is like, he's such a bad communicator. Like, the king, if he just communicated better, like his brother, you could tell by, the scene where the princess is there, and you also have Prince Daemon. The fact that
the standoff on the bridge.
The standoff, yeah. So you can see that he has affection for the princess. And you can see that he kind of still has affection for his brother. The fact that when Corlys Velaryon was talking about his brother, he said, no, only I am allowed to talk about the bad sides of my brother. You're not. So you can still see that he's got
some loyalty,
to his brother. And I think if he could just communicate to his brother and his daughter, all the troubles that he's having doesn't work out. So if he just told his daughter the truth and been like, okay, then I'm looking for someone to marry. I believe that I potentially might go with your best friend. That could have solved something. If he'd spoken and had a better relationship with his daughter, she would have then told him of her idea to squash what was going to happen when Sir Otto Hightower and also with Daemon Targaryen are going to meet up. So instead of like giving like her props, like, oh, you've solved the situation and without bloodshed, and we have the egg back, he's more like, oh, how could you disobey the crown? But the fact is, she's tried so many times to try and like get involved with politics, especially the fact that you said that she is your heir and she's going to be the queen. For you to then put her to the side and be like, no. As the heir, you must be in this glass box protected at all times. And it's like...
that's it. I think that's where that King Viserys is weak, because he's not really leading from the front. And it seems like a good idea that a king goes on the advice of his advisor or their advisors, but it's not setting a good example. And Rhaenyra is going to be against the grain there, because especially with that talk from the queen that never was, she is going to have to take this crown for herself.
Yeah.
And I think you should be like, there should be a spot on the council. What do you call it? What was the King's Council called again?
Small Council, I believe.
Small Council. Yeah, there should be a spot on there for like a PR guru. Like if they had a spin doctor, I would guarantee you he'd probably come across as looking like at least Boris Johnson's government rather than a weak government. Well, to be honest, Boris Johnson's government was weak. Who knows? But he's just a terrible communicator, really bad communicator, and potentially that's the cause for the rift with Daemon and maybe with his daughter. We'll see. And going back to that scene of the standoff with Daemon and the Otto Hightower, gotta admit, what a cool scene. Like you have proper cinematography there with like this mistiness in the background.
Yeah.
That I think was quite common in also the last episode, but early in this episode as well. Like, you know, in the scene of Rhaenyra and Alicent where they're praying with all those candles, that scene was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Like really good. And again, the scene where Corlys Velaryon suggests that the king marries his 12-year-old daughter. The cinematography in that was beautiful as well. The way they caught the background of like the cliff and the water, amazing. Yeah. Although, like, what the hell, marrying a 12-year-old, like, whoa.
That's what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. Like, like stuff like that happened. Like, I remember learning, like, during the Tudors that Henry VII's mother was, I think, 14 when she was pregnant with him. And I think her husband was like in his 30s, and that prevented her from then having any other children because she had a child so early. And then you realize that was like kind of like commonplace at the time. Like, it's really horrendous and horrific, especially like watching it. It was like when he was talking to her, it was like completely cringeworthy. Like, this is weird. And then especially when the king's talking to her and you're like, are they actually going to go through with this? What is wrong with these people? Can't anyone see, like, why isn't anyone saying, this is wrong? But then you're like, that's what happened in medieval Europe.
Yeah, it's really messed up. And I did see like online, there's quite a lot of like social media backlash about it, because potentially that's Game of Thrones going too far. But the key thing is that he didn't do it in the end. But even still, like in medieval Europe, that the stuff wouldn't be uncommon, unfortunately. Wow.
Like,
what
even
a time to be alive, honestly, in that era.
Like, even in the 1700s, like 1800s, like someone was just talking, I think it was on the Daily Show with Trevor Noah. I think they were just going through like the states which marrying a 13-year-old was allowed 50 years ago. And I was like, what?
50 years ago? Oh my God.
I was like, what? And I was like, I thought that stuff had been like thrown away in the heading into the 20th century, but no, like at least in the 60s and some states the 70s, like small counties within a state, it was still legal to marry someone as an adult, to marry a 13-year-old. And I was like, so it's not that far off. And I think one of the things
that's crazy
that George R. R. Martin always wants to do is show realism. Like, if he's taking something from a period or a group of people, he's going to make it as historically accurate and close to what it would have been as usual. And I think, like, when people remember the wedding scene in Game of Thrones,
and the Red Wedding or Joffrey's wedding?
I know the first season, Daenerys' wedding to Khal Drogo.
Oh yeah.
The fans were upset the way that she was treated, and also their marriage situation, and also the night of their wedding when they had sex together. That scene people were upset about. But then I think what he was saying is that I'm not glorifying it. I'm showing that this actually has happened and still does happen. So therefore, bring awareness towards something. It's like when you have like, I remember like shows like either like it's Coronation Street or if it's like EastEnders where there's a big event where someone has either been attacked or person's had, like, for example, been raped or something big, or someone has cancer or someone's being bullied or abused. They're saying that we put it there to show that this is still happening. And then also at the end of every episode like that, they say that, oh, here's how you can help someone. And if you see the signs similar to in this TV show, you then know what to do to help the person and also to spot it early.
Yeah, chop off their head. Exactly. chop off the offender's head. Yeah. Just follow Daemon Targaryen's lead on it and just lead out a massive group of people, just go around beating up all the criminals. Oh, I hope that doesn't get recorded. That might incite violence. Whoops. But yeah, I get what you mean there. Like, it doesn't. I think a lot about George R. R. Martin's writing is he shows social issues in it, which is different to say Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings, well, at least my understanding, I've never read the books, only watched the movies, so maybe if I'm wrong, correct me, but Lord of the Rings doesn't really like talk about those issues. And even with this show, casting Stephen Toussaint, probably butchering that surname now I am. But
yeah.
There was, again, controversy about that because a lot of people were like, oh, Game of Thrones is going woke. They're choosing a black actor to play what should have been a white character. But to be honest, in the book, Fire and Blood doesn't specify what anyone looks like in terms of color of their skin, except for maybe when you're talking about the Dornish or people from Essos. But when it's talking about like all the families from Westeros, it doesn't really say, like, especially with this character. And funny enough, Steve Toussaint like countered that, turned around and said, so wait, you're telling me that having a black guy playing someone themed on a medieval society is unrealistic, but there's bloody dragons flying around and you're gonna like pick on that? Like, come on, fancy is
like, it's really weird like that. And even if my history reading of like the Game of Thrones universe is correct, I think the Valyrian were a family that came to Westeros with the Targaryens, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
and if they did, then technically they won't be ethnically the same as the rest of Westeros.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because technically, if they did come from Essos, and after like High Valyria fell, and then they left with the Targaryens, I think it was 3 families. I've forgotten what the 3rd family is. Then they wouldn't look like anybody. Yeah, so they wouldn't look like anyone else from Westeros. Like, for example, the Targaryens have that white hair and very, very pale look, which is very different from everybody else in Westeros. And potentially, the Valyrians aren't from Westeros themselves originally. They're not from the I think they're called the Andals. They're not from the First Men. They're not from the Rhaenyra people either, or from Dorne. So therefore, Corlys Velaryon could be any ethnicity that they would want, because they never specify what the Valyrians' actually ethnicity was.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, because they hail from Essos, so it could be any ethnicity. And I kind of like how they brought that into Game of Thrones, of this whole universe. Just something to point out so there's another Valyrian house in Westeros called House Celtiga. There's also part of it, but clearly not as involved in the royal family's affairs. But they have a crab on their flag, which is awfully coincidental considering there's the crab feeder out there, don't you think? I wonder who the crab feeder really is. I really hope I've just leaked a spoiler there. That's definitely not in the books, but that would be a cool twist. Yeah. All in all, I'd say for me, because I love the lore, I've read the books, good episode, but for example, I was showing it to a flatmate, and he kind of struggled with it a bit. He's like, it's too much talking, it's too slow. But I think what we'll see in the 3rd episode is a bit more action. And to be honest, it kind of worked with the standoff scene as well, at Castle. What was it called?
Dragonstone. They went to Dragonstone.
Yeah, that's cool. It's interesting how they're really not showing anywhere else apart from Dragonstone and King's Landing. Is there somewhere?
I think they are. They'll show more later on, because not to throw spoilers. Like, later on, things happen all over the map during the actual what they call the Dance of Dragons, and that's all over the place from Gulltown, from the King's Landing, and then also the people involved are all over Westeros as well. So if they fully go into the actual Dance of Dragons, not trying to hit any spoilers here, and they actually show what happens in the Dance of Dragons and the whole situation, then they'll be literally all over the map. They will be from in Winterfell to Dorne to Pike to all over the map. So I think maybe they're like, we'll show the key places where the Targaryens are, because they're the main focus. And then later on in the series,
House of the Dragon, after all,
as things start to spread out a bit, then you get to see then the rest of Westeros, and it'll be nice to see what did Winterfell look like several hundred years before Ned Stark and his family? Is it as built up as it was then? Are there any differences? Or remember, they always tell us in Game of Thrones that the wall was better looked after, there was more people at the wall in the past. So will we actually get to see the wall and see it's fully staffed? And you remember they have the 3 other castles that they have. So you've got
So then
we'll
by the sea. The Shadow Tower?
I believe the Shadow Tower, yeah. So then would those people be fully in with people? And would we actually see like the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch at all involved?
Or would we see the White Walkers?
Yeah. Because they did.
Yeah, that would be a cool cameo.
Yeah,
for sure.
If we saw the King of the King of the Whites, if he was actually somehow in the series, like you just see him getting ready and preparing, that'd be awesome to just like put a thread through, like what was he doing cool. This whole time? Like we know that he was defeated. What's the
Children of the Forest?
No, what's the title they give Daenerys Targaryen that the Red Priests give her?
R'hllor, the Lord of Light?
No, Azor Ahai, I think something like that. Yeah, and that he defeated they say that he defeated the Long Night, which was the King of the Whites. So then it'll be good to see like what the hell was he doing for that whole period of time? Was he like spending time building up his forces again, or was he like trying to recuperate himself? Maybe he'd died, so maybe that's something they could do.
A bit downtime.
Yeah,
I mean, I've read the book. I'm not going to say anything because there'll be spoilers. So we'll see. I think speaking of like a show as well, I think a random bit of trivia I'd want to point out is Corlys Valyrian. I think I touched on this in the last episode, but he's like very well known for being a mad explorer. He's the only Westerosi to have reached a Shire where Melisandre is from in the Game of Thrones universe. Also, speaking of Melisandre, she has the potential to be the only character that will actually I don't know. I really don't know, but she could potentially be in this because she's apparently I think 200 years old or something, because that weird ruby she wears around her neck.
Yeah.
I was reading online about it, so potentially she could be in this, but I don't know. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but keen to see.
And then let's not forget the three-eyed raven it would be around at this time as well. So we might see an appearance from him as well.
Yeah, they're all just chilling, aren't they? Just like, no, I'm not on for this season. Yeah, I'll be around later.
Imagine they're having a whole sit down together. Like, oh yeah, so how many years until we start? Oh, we still have 100 and something years left. Let's just chill in.
Daenerys ain't born yet, so we've got some time. We can chill. I'll be very, very interested to see if they make those appearances. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, even to your point, the episode in itself was an episode of information. So therefore, when we do get the action in episode 3 and possibly episode 4, we understand why the action's taking place.
What do you think is going to happen in episode 3?
At the end of episode 2, I was really hoping that when Corlys Velaryon was talking to Prince Daemon, that they would just then show a scene of the dragon. Because you know how they kept on flicking back from the beach where you've got the crab feeder to Prince Daemon and Corlys Velaryon having their discussion. I was just hoping that just at the end, just as a teaser, that you just see a huge dragon fly over the beach, and then I'll be that would be epic. And I think that's what he's going to do. I think what he might do is just use his dragons and use them as you know how they use planes to basically just swoop in to burn everything there and just to use that to initiate war with the crab feeder.
A bit of modern warfare, nice. Yeah, drop a atomic bomb on them. I will say, have you seen do you watch the episode, the teaser trailers for the next episodes?
I watched it for the episode 2, but I haven't seen the one for episode 3 yet.
Okay, because it's not really a spoiler, but it's literally what you just said. So sorry, spoiler.
I knew it.
See that in the trailer. That's not. It was in the trailer. It's not a spoiler.
I knew it, especially when they showed the scene of the beach. I knew that they are going to have to. He's basically, and the way that he is I think with Daemon is that he cares more about dragons than his brother, because you've never seen his brother anywhere near his own personal dragon at all.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know if King Viserys is a dragon rider, which would be quite symbolic if he ain't. I guess it's symbolic of him being weak. Yeah.
And it kind of got the vibe he kind of didn't see it as being important. Like, especially when he had his talk with his daughter in episode 1, like, oh, what do you think the Targaryens are? What do you think makes us special? So maybe he's thinking like, oh, I don't really need a dragon because I don't really want to fight. I'm not really into warfare. And especially when he has the talk in episode 1 with Corus Valyrian about having a fight with the free cities because of the crab feeder. Seems like he doesn't want any form of conflict. So maybe that's the reason why he's staying away from dragons. But it seems like Daemon's like is enriched with his Targaryen heritage, believes that the importance of the Targaryens, the importance of the dragons as well. And I think
he just steals the show, doesn't he? He's the badass Targaryen. Well, I think Rhaenyra is going to be the badass Targaryen. She did come across as very badass in this when she rides to that Western style standoff and gets the egg back. That was pretty cool against Daddy's orders.
And against her uncle as well, because I think you also have to think about is that it's also her uncle that I kind of think she looks up to as well.
Incest. Sorry, what was that? Strange. I think one of my flatmates just showered incest in my room. How dare they? That was weird.
Yeah, and I think that might play a bit as well.
Yeah, maybe. No spoilers. I think so. I think what happened in the next episode is I totally agree with you that there's going to be some fighting with the crab feeder, but I think we'll see the cataclysm between Rhaenyra and Alicent grow as well, because based on what I saw in the trailers for the entire House of Dragon series, Alicent is against Rhaenyra, hence the Dance of Dragon. So that's probably it. Her Alicent marrying her daddy is what pushed them over the edge. It would be interesting to see who makes the first provocative move, like who makes a snatch for the crown. I mean, Rhaenyra should have it, but based on what the Queen, who never was, says, it's going to be looks like it'll probably be taken away from her. She's just like filling the place until the king has an heir. Maybe that's what will come up, an heir. Maybe Alicent will get preggers, and then that will jeopardize the position.
Yeah, and I think one thing that the wise Targaryens always remember is that they're not from Westeros. And I think when Aegon the Conqueror arrived and got resistance because he married his 2 sisters, I think he remembered and then passed on to like his descendants that, we can't push the Westerosi too hard because if we do, they could potentially rise against us. And I think that's the thing that the king is actually thinking about, that if he puts his daughter on the throne, will there be revolt from people all over the realm to basically say, no, we do not want a queen? Which, unfortunately, at that time, you did have a lot of situations where a king or an emperor would die. His only living or eldest living child was a woman. And basically the nobility, which was 100% men, would say, no, we'll pick somebody else. We'll pick the king's cousin. We'll pick the king's brother. And then you see, like, for example, a good example that I remember watching was in the TV show I think it's called Pillars of Earth, or Pillars of the Earth.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Not...
And I think my friend was telling me that it's kind of linked to, and he believes that story was used to develop the Dance of Dragons and also this TV series, because you had the situation where the king at the time had died.
Right.
And then his sons had also died. So he told his nobility to swear his daughter and swear fealty to his daughter before he died. He then ended up dying. And then those in his nobility, and I think either his brother or cousin, were basically saying that a woman should not be queen. And it led to this huge fight within England for several years. And I don't want to say how it ends, because it ends very similar to the way that it ends in A Dance of Dragons, and also within this TV series. So I'll stop it there. But I think that's where George R. R. Martin gets it from. And I think it's just like how you still even see it today. People are saying like, oh, a woman can't be leader. I can't see a woman to be president or prime minister. And you're like, really? Like after the amount of men that you've seen?
Yeah, who screwed plenty things up royally. Yeah. I guess that's the thing as well with basing anything off a historical event. Yeah. Like, for example, the show Vikings. Love that show, but
I love that
Wikipedia,
show,
yeah. Looked up on Wikipedia about Ragnar Lothbrok after the first episode, and spoilers straight away. I'm not going to say them, but again, yeah, you'll see the spoilers for this if you look up that historical event that you mentioned. Yeah. And there's something he does touch on in Fire and Blood. George R. Martin is this whole thing about men not wanting female rulers, but then you do see a lot of strong female rulers in it, such as Rhaenyra, but also the Lannisters, which actually haven't made an appearance yet in House of the Dragon. But in the books, because the book, this again, House of Dragon is only a section of the book, the Dance of Dragons section. Whilst the rest of the book, there's talk of so many other characters, more about the Starks, more about the Lannisters, the Dornishmen. The Lannisters in it aren't really involved in Dance of Dragons, but they're led by a woman. I can't remember her name, but she's like one of the best leaders in it. And there's like a plague in it where so many men die that women take over the rulership of lots of houses, and they do a better job, but they get no credit for it. No credit. And as soon as a male heir or someone who has enough power to depose them comes in and just take it away, and it's just like, oh, great, you took something good and ruined it. Good work, men. Good work. So, yeah, wow, what an episode. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to touch on? Anything that tickles your tongue?
One final thought for me would be that episode, based off what you said, and I haven't seen the teaser, I think episode 3 is going to be amazing visually, especially just with the action as well. And I think that like you'll start to see like how that Princess Rhaenyra and also her best friend, Lady Alicent Hightower, you're able to then see their relationship fracture, and also be able to see like who is the first person to pull away from their relationship. Yeah. I think you'll see that in episode 3. And I think one key thing that while watching it, I'm not sure, is I think it's like Alicent is being forced and pushed by her father to marry the king. And that's why he's like, as soon as the queen died, oh, I want you to go. And so now you see now, I want you to go wear your mother's dress and then console the king. So you see that he was slyly pushing his daughter to be the next queen. And I think the issue is that if their relationship breaks, it's not actually Alicent Hightower's fault. It's the fact that it's the fact that unfortunately, the same way that Rhaenyra is being pushed around by her father and does what's best for the kingdom, Alicent Hightower is being pushed to do what's best for her house by her father. So the thing, and that the issue could be is that their relationship could break just because of their fathers and the fact that they both want to do the right thing for their house or for Westeros in general.
Yeah, and I guess that's the tragedy of it, because everyone's got to be loyal to their family. Like, you think of Game of Thrones, everyone's loyal to their family except for Tyrion, because, well, his family were never loyal to him. So fuck him.
He was loyal to Tommen and what's Tommen's sister? What's his sister called again?
Myrcella,
yeah. And also to Jaime as well, because Jaime always liked Tyrion, so
yeah, they had each other's backs. Yeah, that's true. Oh, Tyrion, I wish you were in this. He was my favorite character. Who's your favorite character in this so far?
I would have to say my favorite character as a present would be it's because I haven't seen a lot of them, but I would say at present it would have to be Prince Daemon, and then followed by I'm just going to do 3. So starting off Prince Daemon, then followed by Princess Rhaenyra, and then followed by Corlys Velaryon, because I think, I'll say why. So for Corlys Velaryon, I think it's because like he's the only dissenting voice in the council. Everyone's like, oh yes, the tourney is going to be wonderful this year, and also good. It would be nice to have your son being born. And he's like, yeah, but we've got pirates who are literally raiding near our shores and messing up our shipping lanes, and you're talking about a tourney. And I think He's like more of like a practical person.
I know, he's in government. Like, we shouldn't be talking about bread and games when there's like more serious things matter. I think my two favorite characters are Daemon Targaryen and Corlys Velaryon, because they're just badasses. And their second sons, they don't earn shit. They take it. They make the world for themselves. And you know what? That's inspiring. Kind of capitalist sentiment, but hey, what can do is better than feudalist sentiment. So
and you can kind of see it in Game of Thrones, was like the way that Tyrion was, and also remember what's Tywin Lannister's brother? What's his name again?
Tywin Lannister's.
Tywin Lannister.
Kevin Lannister.
I think I think it's Kevin.
I know, it doesn't seem like a very sophisticated name.
Yeah.
Kevin.
But I think it's like you see that in his character as well, that his brother has been like the bulwark of the Lannister family, but then for him, it's just like you kind of see it when he's then the hand of the king. When Tommen's king, and then he then tries to like slide into his brother's role and basically be like, it was just like slide in. Yes, so now I'm the head of the Lannister house, and you kind of see that, and you also kind of see it with
Daemon. Well, Corlys isn't a second son as far as I know, but I think a lot of House Dragon is just about middle child syndrome, or like second child syndrome. Like, first child got all the attention, all the wealth, especially in a society where you inherit stuff of your nobility or royalty. And then it's the second sons that are riling everything up here, possibly. I mean, Otto Hightower, he's a second son. He's trying to get his family into power by making Alicent queen, essentially.
Yeah. And like, even like with the medieval times, I think for some inheritance, it was like, the eldest son gets everything and the rest of the sons get nothing, but just the title. Yeah. So then I think also that is also kind of like a piss take for Daemon, because he thinks like, I'm better than my brother, but just because he was born before me, he then gets a title. He then gets to be king, even though I think I'm a better king than he could be. And then you've also got like on Rhaenyra's side, she believes, okay, then so because I'm a woman, I can't be queen, even though I fit the requirements of being the eldest living child of the king, and also being the only child of the king. And then you also kind of like see that with Rhaenyra's as well, that she was perfect person to be queen, but just because she was a woman, they didn't allow her. So I think it's partly what you said, second sons, but I think it's also to do with people who were better and should be able to do the jobs that they're supposed to do, but just because of the strict rules of the time, they haven't been able to, and then become disgruntled by the rules that govern their times.
Exactly. There's something to be said about meritocracy. And, I'm glad that we've got some form of democracy these days where theoretically we get the right person for the job, but I hate to say it, I don't think that's necessarily true all the time in a democracy. But I mean, in these inherited systems, it's rarely ever the right person for the job. And you'll see with, like, for example, in Game of Thrones, the Mad King who goes around burning everyone, literally just king because of inheritance. So many others could have been better kings than that and wouldn't go around burning everyone.
Yeah, and just quickly to that point, Maester Aemon was actually supposed to be king. Remember in Game of Thrones, he was supposed to be king, but then chose not to, and then chose to join the Night's Watch. So then basically, if he had chosen to be king, there would have been no Mad King, there would have been no rebellion, and there would be no King Robert at all.
This is it. Good people doubt themselves too much. Whilst bad people are so full of their own crap, aren't they?
Yeah. And then maybe that's another thing that we'll see in House of the Dragon as well. Hopefully,
yeah. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today. So I think until next week, we will leave it there. I would love to thank our wonderful audience, and as well as you, Josh, for being there for me always in my times of need to talk about fantasy world. Maybe we can talk about the Lord of the Rings show. Who knows? That would be cool, even though I have no idea what I'm talking about. I could definitely say I learned some things today as well from House of Dragon. I hope our audience did. Hopefully they didn't learn too many spoilers there or some misleading fake spoilers. If you as our audience want to hear the full episodes, make sure you subscribe to our Patreon page. The link can be found down below in the comment section, things like YouTube. If you want to hear more from us, make sure you subscribe to our channel or follow the podcast on whatever listening platform you prefer. If you like the video, a like and a comment is always appreciated. And make sure you click the notification bell to make sure you never miss an episode. Well, thank you so much, folks. Have a lovely rest of your week and watch out for dragons. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.